Welcome to the Podium Pod, the Pick and Rolls National Basketball Podcast, as we are firmly in Paris 2024. I used to say begin the road, and now the road is here. We are walking the road as we speak. I'm Adam Webster. I'm joined today by Pick and Roll feature writer Tom Hirsch. Tom, welcome back to the Podium Pod.
Great to be back with you, Adam. And now that the action's started, it's really getting interesting, and looking forward to getting stuck more into the Opals now that we've seen how well the Boomers kicked us off last night.
Really good win by the Boomers last night. We have the first Opals game ahead of us tomorrow evening as we record this, 7 p.m. on Monday evening. I'd like to thank the schedule makers for Paris 2024 because, Tom, they've really looked after us. We've obviously got a 7 p.m. game and 9:30 p.m. game versus Canada, and then the 5 a.m. game against France is a little more difficult to get up for, but 5 a.m., hell of a lot better than 1:15 a.m., the middle of the night game. We haven't got any of those. Hopefully, we avoid those completely until deep into the medal rounds.
Yeah, exactly. The schedule's very friendly for us, considering that it's being played in Europe. So I agree with you. Thank you to the schedule makers. The 5:30 is not too bad. I've done it before. I actually got up this morning to watch Greece Canada at 5 a.m. So it's doable. But yes, much better than a 1:30 tip-off or a 2:30 tip-off, that's for sure.
Indeed. You love to see it. So ahead of the Opals, it's a bit of a different story to the Boomers. I think the expectations at the very beginning of this Opals team coming together were much higher than at the beginning of the Boomers team coming together, if I can compare and contrast the two. Obviously, the Opals coming off a bronze medal at the World Cup, so they have similar form to the Boomers, but I think the expectation was higher, particularly with the victories against China. Even with the loss to Canada, the narrow loss to Canada, as you and I spoke about last week, there is still an expectation that the Opals will go very deep into this tournament.
Yeah, there is, and I think that's still the case. I mean, but as we spoke about last time, there were probably still a few more questions to be answered at that point in time, some of which we now have some answers to, but there's still a few open questions as to exactly what this roster is going to look like. Having said all of that, and we'll come back to a couple of those things in a moment, I still think this roster is one of the most talented Opals rosters that's ever been assembled. And because of that, I still think they can absolutely contend for a medal and can potentially still push to try and get into that gold medal game and see what happens from there. But the roads are a little bit tougher based on one of the injuries that we weren't sure about last time we spoke after that Canada game. The news obviously coming out afterwards that Bec Allen's hamstring injury was I guess worse than first suspected. Scans confirmed that she will not be able to take any part in this tournament whatsoever, and they have used one of those two emergency players that they had taken over with them, fortunately, in Amy Atwell to round out that 12-player roster. And I like that as a replacement. It was obviously either Atwell or Alice Kunek. And if you're talking about what Bec Allen gives you, first and foremost, it's her perimeter shooting offensively. And Amy Atwell will absolutely be able to replicate a lot of that. She is an elite shooter. We know what she can do at WNBL level. She was there in preseason with Bec at the Phoenix Mercury as well this year. Didn't obviously make that final roster. She's put up 50-point games in NBL 1, so she can absolutely get hot in a hurry. And obviously, she's not going to play as big a role as Bec would, but for someone to come in as an X factor off the bench and be able to get hot, make some buckets, and make an impact, that will most likely be her role. Unfortunately, it's what they lose from Bec Allen on the defensive end of the floor that I think may have the bigger impact on this team. And that's where the health of Steph Talbot really comes into play. And we spoke about that last time. We're not quite sure how Steph is going to be able to attack this tournament from the get-go, just because she's coming in a little bit underdone. She hasn't played in the warm-up games. She missed the last couple of games of the LA Sparks in the WNBA season. But if they've been ramping her up in the background, to get ready for the first game tomorrow night against Nigeria, and she can come in and make an impact, even if it's slightly limited in the first game, then I think she can certainly make up for a lot of what they're going to lose from the absence of Bec Allen.
We had a lot of speculation in the last episode after the Canada game because we looked at Steph Talbot. We thought to ourselves, will she or won't she? Or, is she fully fit? Is there a bit of concern there? We also saw Bec Allen go down. But at that stage, there was no real news out of the Opals camp. They kept it really close to the vest, which, is great respect to Bec and also great respect for the process of replacing Bec with Amy Atwell. It's so disappointing to see any player go down with injury and miss an Olympics. It happens every single Olympiad. And it is always really bittersweet because someone gets an opportunity that, came out of thin air, and someone misses out. And for Bec Allen, she's had such terrible luck as of late. And this just adds to that. And, she's still capable of making another Olympics. She's still in that sort of age window where she can at least play one more. But this is just a devastating injury and a devastating timing of that injury.
It really is, and I feel for Bec, and I know Bec a little bit. We've spoken a number of times, and you don't want any player to go down. But as you said, the road that Bec's had to kind of travel or endure the last couple of years, starting with that horrific injury in the World Cup in 2022, fight her way back. She had the season with the New York Liberty. She was going back to Valencia this past season. That didn't quite work out. She wasn't quite in the right state of mind to finish out that European season and really wanted to focus on getting healthy and right for this Paris campaign and obviously playing for Phoenix in this WNBA season as well. And to have it ripped apart from her right on the eve of the Olympics is the cruelest of blows for Bec. And, she's been to the Olympics before, we know that, but this, I think, was her best chance at an Olympic medal. And that's probably what hurts the most because she really would want to be a part of it. And she really would have helped this team. And I think that loss is, as I said earlier, is going to be a tough one to replace. But the depth of this team is such that they can make up for it. And they are fortunate that they had Amy Atwell at their disposal there and waiting. So we'll just have to see what adjustments Sandy Brondello makes to the plan that she had coming in to this campaign.
Got to be a really tough adjustment to make to lose one of your key players at such a late stage. But that's the beauty of this Opal squad, or at least the positive to taking so many talented players and having such a depth of talent on this squad, is that it is a next person up mentality. It is the ability to be able to plug any hole with any one of a number of very, very talented world level players. I want to talk about the group for a moment. We've got France in there, ranked 7 in the world, Canada ranked 5th, and then Nigeria, the first opponent, ranked 12th. So we're not talking about a group of death like the Boomers necessarily, but with the 5th and 7th place teams in there is a tough group for the the Opals.
It is really tough, and you look at Canada, obviously made the medal rounds at the World Cup 2 years ago. Yeah. France is actually favoured to win a medal this time around. If you look at all the bookmakers' expectations, they're ranked 2nd or 3rd in terms of where people expect that French team to finish in this tournament, and really, almost the second favourite behind Team USA, and obviously the home side has with it a certain advantage as well. So it is not easy by any stretch of the imagination. Nigeria, thankfully, probably, as we spoke about last week, the easiest game out of this pool. Nigeria did not qualify for the World Cup 2 years ago. They were there in Tokyo, finished 11th. A bit of a younger roster than what they had back in Tokyo 3 years ago as well. Their leading scorer from that tournament, Azine Kalu, does return to this team, but a lot of the other players on that roster are newer faces to this program. So yeah, it's probably beneficial in some ways that Nigeria game is up first, because it will give Sandy the opportunity to test out a few players, and especially some of those players that are coming in a little bit underdone, get some minutes under their belt, and ease into this tournament, if you will. But as we know, with what the Boomers are enduring, there are no easy games, and point differential and things like that make up a huge aspect of where the standings might end up. So you really have to come out with a good showing in that first game. And who Sandy Brondello decides to, I guess, replace Bec Allen with in terms of minutes and role, because I would have expected Bec to probably start at the 3 spot. Even though she was coming in a little bit underdone as well. It's going to be really interesting to see what Sandy Brondello does with that spot tomorrow night. There's a couple of different ways I could see it going. I mean, longer term, I think it's Steph Talbot. I think if she's healthy and good to go, then potentially from that second game onwards, she'll be that starting small forward. I still expect it's probably going to be Jade Melbourne and Sammy Whitcomb in the backcourt with Ezzy Magbagor over my shoulder and Alana Smith as the front court players. That 3 spot is the question mark, though. So I think possibly tomorrow night against Nigeria, it might even be Tess Madgen. We saw them start that 3-guard lineup in the warm-up game against Canada. They're a little smaller, but Madgen can do a bit of everything. She can facilitate, she can score, she can play solid defense, and she's a leader out there on the floor, which again, especially with a younger point guard in Jade Melbourne, might be settling at times. The other thing I'm expecting to see is potentially Izzy Borlase playing a bigger role in this first game than we might have expected, just due to the absence of Bec Allen. And Izzy was great in those China warm-up games, but she hasn't played in these last 2 games they played in Segovia in Spain. So that's going to be interesting to see as well. So how much she plays, what sort of role they give Amy Atwell. As I said, there's still a few questions to be answered. We're going to learn a lot from this first game against Nigeria tomorrow night. So again, it is in many ways lucky, if you can call it lucky, that they've got the easier of the 3 games up first.
Well, speaking of luck, we're very lucky and proud to be brought to you by Team Feet. Team Feet offers premium athletic socks for modern teams, however they compete, with sweat wicking cotton, arch support, ventilation panels, and compression stitching. Team Feet socks are built to outperform. Whether your team is tiny or 1,000 strong, Team Feet unites and excites your players and supporters with their combination of quality and performance. Join basketball teams around Australia and the world by choosing Team Feet. For designs and worldwide delivery, head to teamfeet.com. So, Tom, we're looking at, would you predict Tess Madgen, or would you predict Madgen, or would you predict someone else, Talbot, to start in that small forward spot? Who are you saying will definitely play against Nigeria? I'll get you to put your name to it, and we'll see how right or otherwise you are tomorrow night.
If I had to make a guess for the starting lineup, I'd go with Tess Madgen, just because she's played a bit more lately than Steph Talbot has. I don't know that you throw Steph straight into a starting lineup when she's coming in without having played for a couple of weeks now. But I do expect her to play, and I do expect her to play quite a significant role. And they're going to rely on her at that 3 spot, and to try and pick up some of the defensive slack that they're going to lose from not having Bec Allen, that's for sure. And obviously, Steph at her best, she's a past Defensive Player of the Year in the WNBL. She made the all tournament 5 at the last World Cup as well, for her work on both ends of the floor. So she'll be a difference maker for sure. But I would guess that Madgen, unless they throw Izzy Borlase, but again, coming in underdone, I think it's probably going to be Madgen at that 3 spot alongside Wickham and Melbourne. It is tough. Yeah. And then you look at how much you can bring Amy Atwell off the bench, for example, and just to help to fill the void of some of those minutes, because they're going to need to be careful about the minutes they deploy to some of these players who, like Borlase and like Talbot, who haven't played much of late. So I don't think you're going to see someone coming out and playing 30 minutes at that 3 spot tomorrow night.
I was going to ask about the backcourt, because we've seen Jade Melbourne start, and we're probably predicting that will continue. And then Christy Wallace has played big minutes off the bench as well. Do you see it as a case of, Jade and Sammy as the starters, obviously Tess playing a bit more small forward these days now because of the injury, and then Christy Wallace and Izzy Borlase being the backup sort of backcourt there is getting the lion's share?
Well, I would probably say it's Christy and then Steph Talbot who's going to come in at either a 2 or a 3 spot there.
Yeah.
And then
some 3-guard, as you said.
Yeah. And they could even play Christy Wallace in a 3-guard lineup with Jade and with Sammy at times as well, just because of her defensive prowess.
Yep.
It's just a size piece and how much they give up on the boards for that. But when you've got Ezzy and Alana on the interior, and Jade Melbourne's a very strong rebounder for a guard as well, hopefully they can make up for that. And then I'd expect some spot minutes for Izzy Borlase and Amy Atwell on those wing positions as well at times.
And we'll finish with the front court. We'll talk about that as well. Obviously, they've played a very big front court, and they've sort of prioritized the interior defense more than anything else. Nothing easy inside, which has been kind of exploited at different points with a lot of 3-pointers. I want to talk about a couple of things with the front court. The first one is fouling. The team gave up, I think it was 53 free throws in 2 games in Segovia. Free throw attempts, that can't be something that continues onto the group stage. That's a staggering volume of free throws. And we know that this team plays hard. It's a cultural thing where Australian teams play really hard, tough, gritty defense. And in FIBA at times you get a little bit of a tough whistle. We saw it with Boomers last night a little bit in parts. But, I mean, 26 free throws one game, 27 free throws the other game. That's going to lose you a game here or there if you continue to give up free throw line attempts at that clip.
Yeah, it is, and it's a concern, but I think it's something they would have addressed in the last couple of days following those 2 warm-up games. I think also part of that plays into just a change in officiating style once they came
Yep.
over to Europe for those 2 warm-up games, and especially for those players like Ezzy and Alana Smith who've come over from the WNBA, where it is a different whistle to what you get at the FIBA level, especially from some of these European officials. So that they'll make the adjustment. They've both played in these FIBA tournaments before. So I think they'll be just fine. And the other thing is that they've got great front court depth. So, even if one of those bigs does get into foul trouble, you've got Kayla George, Lauren Jackson, Mariana Tolo off the bench as well. So they've got plenty of front court depth to cover for that. But absolutely, in terms of just purely giving up that many free throws, that is a concern, and it's not a recipe for success. That's one you can take forward.
Well, that was going to be my other question about the front court rotation. Mariana Tolo appears to be sort of the 5th player of this front court rotation. You've obviously got Alana and Ezzy starting. Then you've probably got Kayla coming off the bench along with the GOAT. So Mariana Tolo, veteran of this Opals program, is probably the one that gets on if there is foul trouble with a couple of those players. Do you think that that's probably about what we'll see across this group stage as well?
I would think so. I think Tolo will play though, just not a massive role. Some
Short
spot minutes here
spurts?
there, and yeah, some short
Yep.
spurts come in, throw a weight around. She sets great screens.
Yep.
She rebounds really well, and she can score when she needs to.
Yeah.
So she might be kind of that X factor big off the bench, depending on the matchups, depending on foul trouble from her teammates, depending on the situation. But I think you're right in terms of Kayla George and Lauren Jackson being the first 2 bigs off the bench and playing some kind of deeper minutes than Tolo will. And obviously their ability to extend the floor. Tolo can kind of step out to just before the 3, not quite to the 3, but Kayla George and Lauren Jackson obviously can score from anywhere on the floor, and that's something
Different
that
look, isn't it?
yeah, exactly. And especially when you've got Alana Smith who can do the same, just to have that continuity and be able to bring the bigs from the opposition team out with you on occasion is really key to how this team wants to play, and opens up space for some of these guards like a young Jade Melbourne and Steph Talbot and those sorts of players. Even Izzy Boulace when she gets in to attack the basket and get into the paint.
And just gives them a rebounding advantage on the inside, having 2 genuine bigs out there at the same time. I think, this team has so many strengths. We've seen the Boomers go with a really playmaking heavy roster. I mean, the Opals have got a lot of shot making, a lot of shooting, and a lot of rebounding in there as well, a lot of interior defense. And that's kind of their identity heading into this group stage. Tom, are you predicting 3 from 3?
They're certainly capable. I'm not 100% sold. I think they'll beat Nigeria comfortably. I think they'll beat Canada. I think they probably should have won that game last week. They certainly had their opportunities. Yep. And I'm not sure, as we spoke about last week, they showed everything. I don't know about France. I think France is going to be a really, really challenging game.
They're at home.
Notwithstanding the fact they're at home, they're just a really talented team. And not a team that the Opals have seen much of late. So that one's going to be tight, but they certainly have the ability to beat them. But if they were going to drop any of the 3 games, it might be that one against France.
Well, we will be watching and covering that all Olympics long at the Podium Pod. We'll be bringing you post-game live streams on YouTube, which will be transferred, of course, to our podcast feed, which you can find at our Substack site. You can find it at Apple Podcasts and also Spotify as well. So if you are on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and click the notification bell for every live stream we have coming out. Then if you're a Apple Spotify listener, then please subscribe to the Podium Pod as well as Unwrap, the Pick and Roll podcast on the pick and roll as well. We're working incredibly hard for you the next couple of weeks. Tom, you'll be there across this Opals potentially medal winning Paris run. Looking forward to having your company throughout.
Thanks, Adam. Always fun to chat.
Thanks, everyone. And we'll see you after the Opals versus Nigeria game tomorrow night, here live on YouTube and across our podcast network. We'll see you again next time.